What's good? It's Woog. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. We have Mario Barrios, 26 wins, 0 losses, defending his WBA regular 140-pound title against Gervonta Davis, 24 wins, 0 losses. And Davis, by the way, holds a title at 130 and a lesser title at 135. And I want to be clear, this 140-pound title that Mario Barrios holds is not the real WBA belt. Josh Taylor has all the belts in that division. This is basically, the way I see it, the WBA trying to have a foothold in the game to where if one promoter and network have a stable of fighters and they're going to be fighting each other and there's a belt in that promotion and platform, then the WBA creates another title. This one is the regular belt to then give to the other promoters stable so they could have another belt in circulation there. It's really ridiculous, and it kind of confuses some of the boxing public as to what's what in terms of who are the true champions in what divisions. So this is a champion by name and WBA recognition only. Not to say he's not a good fighter or even a potentially great fighter, but Mario Barrios' belt that he holds at 140, it ain't worth a damn but a name. But from a matchmaking standpoint, I think that Gervonta Davis is taking this angle because, one, the divisions that Gervonta Davis has fought at, 130 and 135, PBC, his promoter, doesn't have a lot of good fighters in those divisions. Top ranked, Bob Arum has the major guys at 130 and 135, most of them at least. And because there's not a lot of cross-promotional fights taking place, Gervonta Davis has to pick an opponent in a fight in his next one that's credible, but within the PBC realm. So what did he do? He looks at somebody who's got a belt at 140. So then if Gervonta Davis is able to beat Mario Barrios, then he's able to say he is a 3-division champion, even if the only true belts that he held were at 130. He won a legitimate IBF belt at 130, which he lost on the scale, and then won a WBA belt, legitimate super belt at 130 after that. But the belt that he holds at 135, which is the weight class between where he's, to me, at his best, I look at him as being potentially the best guy at 130. He's only fought once at 135, and that was for a vacant WBA lesser belt against Yoriorkis Gamboa, who himself is not a true 135 guy. It's really ridiculous. But Davis technically won, a belt, lesser belt at 135, but this fight is taking place even a level up from that, 140, where Gervonta Davis has never competed. So these different things, yes, the belt picture makes things confusing, but the fight itself is a very interesting matchup and a dangerous one. See, Gervonta Davis was really starting to make a name for himself like in 2015, 16, 17, and gets his first title opportunity against a really good fighter, Jose Pedraza. And Gervonta Davis stopped Pedraza in the 7th round. That, to me, is still Gervonta Davis's most significant, meaningful win from a purist standpoint. If you look at where Pedraza is or was in his career when he fought Davis, that was a very tough and credible opponent, even if a few years later he would knock out, he being Gervonta Davis, would knock out Leo Santa Cruz with a vicious counter left uppercut. One of the knockouts of the year, according to several publications. And that is still the only fight that Leo Santa Cruz has ever been stopped. Only his second loss overall in Santa Cruz's career. But it is this fight versus Jose Pedraza a few years prior to that, again, I look at it as being his most impressive victory. And that, again, is the one that earned him his first title, the IBF 130-pound title, which he defended a couple times, then lost on the scale, and then fights for a WBA vacant 130-pound title against Jesus Cuellar, who, what is Cuellar doing in a title fight at 130? But Gervonta Davis knocked him out in the 3rd round, defends it successfully a couple of times against Hugo Ruiz, who was a late replacement for Abner Mares. That would have been an interesting fight. That was one I was looking forward to. Actually attended the fight, and Mares got injured. Hugo Ruiz steps in and gets knocked out in the first round. And then Gervonta Davis knocks out Ricardo Nunez. And then he goes up to 135 to fight former 126-pound champion, former Olympic gold medalist, Yuriorkis Gamboa. And that actually ended up being a more competitive fight. And people didn't expect it to be too competitive because Gamboa is almost 40 years old at this point. But Gamboa actually takes Gervonta Davis into the 12th round. And Gamboa reportedly had a Achilles injury for that fight. Still made it into the 12th round, competitive fight. Davis ends up dropping him and then stopping him in the 12th round. And again, this earned Davis a 135-pound title, which, again, totally illegitimate in my book. But it was this vacant lesser belt, and Gervonta Davis stopped Gamboa to earn that title. And at this point, Gervonta Davis is really growing into a boxing sensation. And he had a lot of hype early on. Like, you know, by the time he was 21, 22 years old. I mean, he's still only 26 years old, even after having these few years of professional success. And, you know, I don't use the word boxing sensation lightly. That's basically somebody who's got all the hype and the apparent talent to match, as opposed to some other great fighters who start off under the radar and have to prove and impress you over time to where they've earned enough belts, beaten enough good fighters to where the public can't deny it any longer. It's like, yeah, this is a great fighter. Gervonta Davis, nah, he pretty much was recognized as, hey, this could be the future of boxing. He was recognized as that pretty early on. But after that Yuriorkis Gamboa fight, Gervonta Davis headlines his first pay-per-view against former multi-divisional champ Leo Santa Cruz, and this fight took place at 130. And at this point, Santa Cruz's only loss was against Carl Frampton in a fight where it was back and forth, super close. It could have gone either way. Both Santa Cruz and Frampton were kind of like on the margins of the on people's pound for pound list. So these fights were big deals at 126. And Santa Cruz avenged that loss in the rematch versus Carl Frampton. So they're 1-1 and have never had a trilogy fight. So going into this fight against Gervonta Davis, you've got Santa Cruz with only one loss in his record, who has only competed at 130 once in his career, versus Miguel Flores, and Santa Cruz won that via decision. So this Gervonta Davis versus Leo Santa Cruz took place last Halloween, and it was a super back and forth fight. There was a lot of question as to how Gervonta Davis would respond to Santa Cruz's volume and his treadmill from hell style of pacing, and then how Santa Cruz was going to deal with Gervonta Davis's knock your head off type of power. Well, again, these first few rounds were super competitive, and then in the 6th round, you could see Davis trying to set up that left uppercut, and he hit him with it a few times and barely missed other times, and Davis also has a nice whipping right hook. But this was a back and forth fight where you could see Santa Cruz's pressure kind of getting to Davis, but Davis was really rocking him with some nice shots. Not rocking him where you see Santa Cruz's leg buckle, but just where you see the splashing punch, where the commentators, the fans, everybody knows, damn, you know, Davis is throwing some real heat. But so was Santa Cruz. Again, super competitive fight until Davis set him up for a vicious counter left uppercut that put Santa Cruz's lights out. We're talking flat on his back. This happened in the corner of the ring, to where as soon as the ref saw Santa Cruz go down, he waves off the fight. Gervonta Davis jumps up on the other turnbuckle celebrating. Super dramatic scene. Santa Cruz remains down for several seconds, if not a minute plus. It was a scary scene for a minute. That's how dramatic and devastating an uppercut knockout, one punch uppercut knockout this was. Super big win for Gervonta Davis. Floyd Mayweather, his mentor and promoter, manager in a sense, he was in attendance. This was during the COVID pandemic, so everybody's masked up. So after that, sensational, I'll use that word again, sensational finish knockout for Gervonta Davis. The question was, well, who the hell is he going to fight next? Because we know that, again, unless there's a cross-promotional effort, he can't fight the guys that we want to see him fight. We'd love to see him fight Oscar Valdez, Shakur Stevenson, down at 130, or, you know, Lomachenko, Teofimo Lopez, Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia at 135. So it's like, who's Davis going to fight? I don't think PBC is going to put him up against prospect Chris Colbert. So the creative matchmaking and ambition has them putting Davis up against that lesser belt holder, Mario Barrios, at 140. And by the way, Barrios has fought on a couple of Gervonta Davis undercards. So they're very familiar with each other. They have shared the card multiple times. Now, compared with Gervonta Davis's compact stature, he's about 5'5.5". He doesn't have a long reach. It's like 67 inches. Mario Barrios is 5'10", so close to a 5-inch height advantage for Barrios with a 71-inch reach, so a 4-inch reach advantage as well. Very tall fighter for the division, Mario Barrios. And he's been looking very good. As, 17 of his 26 wins have come via knockout. His best punch, in my opinion, is that left hook to the body. He does have a laser of a right hand as well, but he's got a nice left hook to the body. He's trained by Virgil Hunter, the former trainer of Andre Ward, Hall of Famer. Trained Amir Khan for a while and several others. Virgil Hunter's a real deal. So he's going to have Mario Barrios ready to go here. Now, Barrios started popping up on, boxing fans' radars a few fights ago. I would say about 2018 when he won like one of those intercontinental titles against Jose Roman. And then he fought Richard Zamora on that Gervonta Davis versus Hugo Ruiz undercard. And Barrios and Zamora, they battled it out for a few rounds. It was back and forth with, Barrios dishing out most of the whooping, but Zamora was finding a lot of opportunities to counter and to jump in and counter with the right hand. Again, in this division, Barrios' size advantages are very noticeable. He's usually kind of like looking down at his opponent, as will be the case with him versus Gervonta Davis. So it was a very competitive fight until Barrios just splashed Zamora with combinations, and then the ref stopped the fight. Paulie Malignaggi on the broadcast thought that the fight was stopped a little bit prematurely because Zamora was still fighting back, still throwing punches back, and still somewhat intelligently defending himself, but Barrios was really starting to pour it on and was just lacing him with some very heavy shots. Again, Barrios is a very hard hitter, not only with that left hook that goes up top, but especially to the body, but also with that straight right hand. So after that win versus Zamora, Mario Barrios knocks Juan Velasco out in the second round with a body shot. Again, that damn left hook to the body. And it's not like a wide hook. It's like it comes at an angle, it's almost like a left uppercut, but because of the leverage that he's getting into it, it's quick and it just gets to that little soft part of the body area very quickly and hard. So Barrios at this point is really starting to shine on some of these lesser cards and, to the hardcore boxing public. And then he fights Batir Akhmedov. And this fight ends in unanimous decision. It was a win for Mario Barrios, but not without controversy. He did drop Akhmedov twice in this fight, but Akhmedov appeared to be winning the majority of the rounds, and this was a pretty disputed decision win for Barrios. He came out of this one looking more vulnerable than before. If you look at the beating that he took, he had a very lumped up face by the end of that fight. And, I'm thinking that maybe Gervonta Davis saw something in this Barrios versus Akhmedov fight. Because check this out. Akhmedov, like Davis, is a southpaw. And he's not as short as Davis. He's about 5'7". Again, Davis is about 5'5.5". But I'm just thinking of what is it that Gervonta Davis and his team are seeing vulnerability-wise in Mario Barrios. Again, aside from the fact that Barrios is holding that lesser WBA title, which, again, if Davis wins, he could say 3-division champ Gervonta Davis, although those in the know that only one division out of those 3 divisional titles are really legitimate and credible. But Akhmedov gave Barrios a very difficult fight, although Barrios did, again, drop Akhmedov twice. So the power is the constant here, fight after fight for Barrios. And then after that super close decision win for Barrios, he fights Ryan Carl, who made it interesting in the early rounds because he is such a volume puncher, kind of like Santa Cruz, was kind of overwhelming Gervonta Davis in spots with his volume. Ryan Karl, just because he's 3 sheets to the wind, is coming forward at all times, throwing, 3-4 punches at a time, and it took Barrios a minute to adjust to that. He did end up stopping Karl in the 6th round. He dropped him multiple times in that fight, and he finished him again. So as good as Karl was doing in those early rounds, the power that he was getting popped with again, that straight right, and, this time the very snappy jab of Barrios was connecting as well. He did use the jab to kind of mitigate some of the pressure that Karl was bringing to the table, but again, when Karl would jump in, Barrios would find that opportunity as he closes to, boom, another hook to the body. Because check this out. Barrios is one of these rare people who had a growth spurt late. Like, as an adult, he grew a few inches. So when he was boxing a few years ago, significantly shorter, he was able to develop an inside game because he had to close the distance on sometimes taller fighters. So he knows how to fight in close quarters. It just so happens now, he just grew a few inches, and so now he's a taller fighter with an outside and an inside game. But Virgil Hunter, back in 2019, around the time that he fought Zamora at that fight that I attended on the Davis versus Ruiz undercard, trainer Virgil Hunter said that Barrios was still about a year away from being at an elite level and ready to fight the major guys. And by the way, this is as Barrios was already ranked #1 contender for a lesser title by the WBA. So that tells you a little something about their ranking system and, the steps that a fighter has to go through to get that #1 contender. Anyway, I'm not going to get back into that. But Barrios had a growth spurt late, so he's got a very unique skill set in that he has the advantages that tall fighters have, but has the skill set also of the inside game that a lot of shorter fighters are equipped with. So he stops Ryan Karl, and that is his most recent fight. So here we go. Gervonta Tank Davis versus Mario Barrios. Again, I laid out the dimensional differences between the guys, stature and size-wise. And I think that this is a very dangerous fight for Gervonta Davis because, Karl was able to give Barrios some problems with the volume. And I've seen tape recently of Gervonta Davis working the bags, like trying to throw like a ton of punches per minute. And I know that that's not Davis's game. He obliged Santa Cruz's game a little bit when Santa Cruz poured the volume on, but no, it's not in Davis's natural game to just start letting his hands go. He's a sharpshooting counterpuncher who's got very remarkable explosion, speed, and power-wise. Sometimes you see his stature and you forget how quick his explosion is and how much distance he can travel with some of these power punches. He had to account for the height gap between him and Santa Cruz. And even Santa Cruz is just a shade over 5'7". So I'm thinking, how is this going to play out with the guy who's over 5'10" in Mario Barrios? It's like, if you did see some vulnerabilities in Barrios in those fights against Ryan Karl and even those few rounds against Zamora, or obviously in that close decision win against Akhmedov, you might have seen him get hit a lot. So I think that maybe Team Davis is thinking, this guy's getting hit in these fights, and if I'm hitting him, I being Gervonta Davis, he's not going to make it 12 rounds if he's that vulnerable to counters when he's throwing his power shots. Because Barrios is tall, but he doesn't, fight in a, like Vitaly Klitschko and Richard Dwyer, online boxing analyst, points this out, that, certain fighters are able to use the height in a way where they're leaning back and, Tyson Fury when he wants to, Vitaly Klitschko when he wants to, are going to use that height. So they're difficult to touch by the opponent. Mario Barrios kind of leans forward a little bit. So I'm thinking maybe that's what they're seeing because of how wicked Davis's, for instance, his left counter uppercut is perfect for somebody who's going to be leaning into him and throwing lumbering shots. Now, I don't mean lumbering in the speed of the shot because, again, Barrios' power punches are pretty snappy. He gets in and out of there pretty quickly, but he does hold his hands kind of low, and he is kind of scooping in some of his power punches. And if Davis is seeing that as the opportunity to exploit, then there will be that opportunity there. The question is, we know that Davis is a murderous puncher at 130. We suspect that he's a devastating puncher at 135 as well, even though it took him 12 rounds to get 40-year-old undersized, because he's, again, Yuriorkis Gamboa, former 126-pound champ. Davis took 12 rounds to stop Gamboa, but we still suspected that he's got devastating power at 135, even though that's his only fight at 135. We have no idea whether his power carries to 140, totally untested. So we're operating under the premise that Gervonta Davis is still Gervonta Davis at 140. We just don't have the evidence to support that. So make no mistake, Gervonta Davis is the A-side fighter here. He is the superstar that's carrying this pay-per-view. I just think he might have bitten off more than he could chew, taking on this 140 guy who, yes, has fought as small as featherweight in the past, but who has seemed to be acclimated at 140. So not only do we not know if Davis can hurt these 140 guys the same way that he's hurting these 130 guys, and in the case of Gamboa, 135 guys, but we don't know how Davis is going to respond to the power of a 140 opponent. I mean, we saw that he was having some issues with, again, totally different style in Leo Santa Cruz, who throws a lot of volume, and was having some difficulties in competitive rounds against Gamboa, as well as with now a true 140 guy, Pedraza. We just saw Pedraza win an upset victory about a week ago. So Pedraza is still a real near elite fighter. I'm going to stop short of calling him elite, even though, you know, he fought Lomachenko competitively and fought Davis competitively. I'm not going to call him an elite guy, but Pedraza to me is near elite. But Davis has had trouble with, you know, some of these opponents in the past. And I'm just thinking, like, is he expecting Barrios' volume to lessen over time? Or that his punching power is gonna wane over time? Whereas Davis apparently has 12-round power. It seems to carry late in the fights. Not all heavy punchers are able to do that. I think Davis has the hand speed advantage. I mean, shit, he better. And Barrios, again, is there in enough moments to get hit to where I think Davis is going to land flush a few times. I just don't know if that is going to be enough to just put Barrios away. You know, I think it's just as likely that Barrios could hurt Davis. Like, so in terms of who's going to get a jelly leg first in this fight, again, I'm just trying to get a gauge of what team Gervonta Davis saw in all these times that these guys are fighting on the same card to make Davis say, yeah, I want that guy. But my prediction in this one, I'm actually going to go with the big upset right here. I mean, call me crazy, and maybe I'm totally missing something. And again, it's very possible that Davis does knock him out there, and anybody who betted against him or predicted against him is going to look like a complete idiot. But just based on the evidence, having seen both of these guys fight several times, understanding their styles, I'm just thinking, you know, Davis, with all the elite talent that he has, would have been much better served fighting another 135 guy. I mean, I really wish that there were more of these cross-promotional fights so we could see the best fight the best at 130 and at 135. You know, we get glimpses of that. Sometimes, yes, we get Teofimo Lopez against Vasily Lomachenko. But those are the exceptions, not the rules. And they require most of the time the promoter to have both fighters. So there isn't any cross-promotional effort. But unfortunately, we don't get that in this case. And unfortunately for Gervonta Davis, in my opinion, this is going to cost him big time here. Again, this is going to be a big step up. It's an ambitious undertaking trying to fight Barrios at 140. I just think that this one is going to backfire on him. And not only do I think that Barrios is going to win this fight, because again, they're going to be trading in some of these scenarios, and it's going to be up to Davis to keep on closing the distance. And although, you know, Barrios is kind of a leaner sometimes, I think that Virgil Hunter is going to be advising him Otherwise, to try to lessen those knockout opportunities for Davis, I think that they're going to be working on that on the Barrios side. But Barrios is going to be catching Davis enough times at distance to where it's going to be exhausting for Davis to keep on closing the gap, closing the distance with the vast height disadvantage. But as he's getting hit to the body and up top, how much steam is Davis going to have going into the middle and later rounds? Now, as Davis, I think, is going to start to lose some of these rounds, there's going to be pressure on him to put his foot on the gas and to press the issue. If those knockout opportunities aren't continuing to come his way, he's going to have to go hunting for the bigger Barrios. And then what happens? You tend to leave yourself more vulnerable the more aggressive you get. And I think that he's going to get caught, he being Davis, with some vicious Barrios power punches. And I think Barrios is actually going to win this one via knockout or TKO. I can't even believe I'm saying that out loud. And again, this could backfire not on Gervonta Davis, but on me making this prediction here. Again, pound for pound, if Davis is at 135, I still look at Davis as being the more talented fighter between the two, especially at 130, which again, I look at as being Gervonta Davis's money division. But since he's fighting this fight at 140, it makes me think that we are done seeing Gervonta Davis at 130. I think that at the lowest going forward, he's going to go to 135. But I think that this is kind of going to be his Alamo. And unlike his last fight, which took place at the Alamo Dome, this one's taking place at the State Farm Arena in Atlanta, Georgia, which is one of the other places that Gervonta Davis loves to fight. Obviously, he loves his homecomings in Baltimore as well. But Atlanta has kind of been, his home turf since that fight against Gamboa. But I think that this is going to be one of those, gut checks, which isn't going to go his way. I think he's going to be stopped, and it's going to be a pushback to 135, where it was a little too much too soon. Kind of like Israel Adesanya trying to go up to fight Jan Blachowicz for you UFC fans. He went up from middleweight 185 to light heavyweight 205, lost to Jan Blachowicz, and now went back to middleweight 185, which was always the plan, to go back and defend his title. But in the case of Gervonta Davis, he still has a belt at 130, which again, I don't think he's going to be able to make 130 again. He's had enough weight issues in the past to where I think that ship has sailed. And I think that after this fight at 140, he's going to have to go back and defend and campaign at 135 again. I don't know what fights they will or won't make there because of the promotional issues. Again, we would all love to see him fight Haney, Teofimo Lopez, Lomachenko, Ryan Garcia, you name it. But we are stuck at where we're stuck at. And unfortunately, I think that that's going to be Davis's undoing in this case. Creative matchmaking. I applaud him for the ambition in trying to become a 3-division champ fighting up at 140, but this just wasn't the time or place or opponent in this case. And damn, for his sake, I hope he's right in whatever they were scouting and saw in Mario Barrios. But I don't think it's going to happen on the night of Gervonta Davis versus Mario Barrios. And by the way, they should have built this one, if we are going the purest route, they should have built it Mario Barrios versus Gervonta Davis, because it's going to be Mario Barrios' title on the line, not Davis's. But, that's politics. That's the benefit of being the A-side fighter, even if you are the challenger and not the champion in this case. But yeah, let me know what you think about this fight. Dangerous matchmaking here. Please leave your comments in the comments, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.